Hello, everyone. I'm Janet Salmons, Methods Guru for Sage Methodspace, and I'm joined here today by Linda Bloomberg. You have a chance to meet in a moment, and we're going to have a conversation about teaching research and guiding researchers, particularly in the online environment. But before we get started, if you are new to Methodspace, this is a blog community hosted by Sage Publications, and we're interested in all things to do with designing and conducting research, writing about research and sharing results, whether in writing or through other forms. And as you can see, kind of at the center of this is teaching and learning, because we're interested in all the different ways that we can support student researchers, novice researchers, people who are, perhaps engaging with a new approach, even though they're experienced researchers. We offer original posts and resources around all of those topics. So, I'm happy to have Linda here with me today, who has experience really in all of these realms. So why don't you just introduce yourself a little bit?
Thanks, Janet, and hello, everybody. I'm very pleased to be here, and thanks, Janet, for welcoming me and for setting this up. I've worked with Sage Publications for many years now as a writer, as an author, and I'm always thrilled to work with Sage. So thank you so much. Do you want me to introduce a little about my background now?
Sure.
Okay, so as I was saying to Janet at one point in our conversations previously, I come with quite a few different divergent strands in my background. Previously, I had a degree in psychology, which I actually got in South Africa, which is where I was raised and grew up, and then went on to do a master's degree in adult education and then a doctorate in adult education and adult development. So I've really merged my psychology and adult education backgrounds with a very strong research background, and more recently with a lot of research in online learning. So those are the different aspects which make me up as a person, an educator, a researcher, and a writer.
Right, and they certainly come together in the things that you've written. And before I go on to, ask you about this book, the Completing Your Qualitative Dissertation, a Roadmap from Beginning to End, I have to give a shout out to my former doctoral students. I was a doctoral mentor for a long time, a dissertation supervisor. And I think, part of the reason why the people who worked with me can be called doctor today is because we used your book as a guide, so that, when I was working with them, all distance, in a distance learning program, working online, we had kind of a common manual we could turn to. And I really appreciated the practical nature of this book, with the kind of, as I put on this slide, the checklists and examples that were, just incredibly useful. So I know you have a new edition of this book coming. So why don't you just give us a little background about this book and
Sure.
what went into it?
Sure. Well, thanks. Thank you so much for your positive encouragement about the book. The book first went into publication. The first edition was in 2008, and it was just after I got my own doctorate, which I did at Teachers College, Columbia University in New York. And I recognized that the dissertation process was a very tedious, iterative one that not everybody enjoyed. Not only not enjoyed, but found pretty difficult to navigate. It's a really messy process, as you know yourself, Janet. So together with one of my professors, we put together the first version of the book. The book is now currently in its 4th edition, and hopefully we'll go into a 5th edition at some time pretty soon, in the next year or two. I'm already preparing for that edition, and I've collected a lot of material. But the current edition, the 4th edition, which I feel is the most comprehensive, and which includes a new chapter on alignment among all the different components of a dissertation, which is key, which is really the underlying factor that makes a dissertation strong and congruent. This is a new chapter that was introduced into this new edition. Just to go back a moment, the conceptualization for this book was that it was going to be a dissertation in action. And as you're familiar with the book, each chapter contains an instruction section and an application section. And the application section is actually an example of what a real dissertation chapter would look like. So each of the chapters of the book focuses on a particular dissertation chapter and gives the instruction on how to do it, not in a recipe cookie cutter way, but in an instructive way, which was the hope. Because remember, every single institution is different, and every institution has different requirements, and there are nuances about how dissertation chapters need to be presented, and that's an institution preference. So we try to be as broad as possible without losing the richness of it. So the application sections of each chapter are examples of what that chapter could actually look like. But the reason that this book has done so well, and I think is so well accepted, is that it's very cutting edge and up to date and current, because each edition, and this is what I make very clear in each edition, that all the references and the resources are the newest and the latest and the greatest and the most cutting edge at the time. And that's what I've been collecting for the new upcoming 5th edition, where all the references will be updated. One of my pet peeves in research is using outdated references. So I'm very, very aware of keeping these as current as possible. But yeah, that's basically the outline of the book, that it was just meant to be a really helpful and practical guide to students. And I do receive a lot of positive comments about the book from students all over the world and faculty members who are using it with their students. And I use it with my dissertation students, and I know that a lot of my colleagues use it as well. So thank you very much for your encouragement about the book.
So then you have kind of the other hat with the online teaching and learning, and you're contributing a series of posts to Methodspace, which we'll link to the page with the recording, so that people can see that whole series as it unfolds. So, you know, I wondered if you could just kind of bridge between these two things, you know, especially for people who are now finding themselves either teaching research or working with researchers online today.
Okay. Well, as you know, and as we all know, in this year, starting in the spring of this year, everything kind of transitioned to online in an urgent and rather rapid fashion, beyond anybody's control. And now many students and faculty and across the board and in almost every country are now having to learn online. And for most people, this is new. If you hadn't already started at an online university and you were working in a traditional bricks and mortar university in whatever program you were, you're now doing partly online, almost totally online at this point, and none of us know where this is heading in the near future. So what basically, well, let me just say, about a year ago, I started writing a new book on how to teach online. And my editor, Helen Salmon of Sage Publications, who heads and has been my editor with completing a qualitative dissertation, the book that we just discussed, she heard about this new book of mine, and she asked me to write a series of posts for Sage, which is what you're talking about, which the listeners can link to, I'm imagining. And this was about how to teach online. Most of these posts are written for instructors who have rapidly had to transition to teaching online. And there is also one post that's written for students about how to engage in your online courses. And I believe that one was actually very recently put up on the Sage site. So bringing together my two interests, being qualitative research and dissertation advisement on the one hand, and learning online on the other, because I do work currently as an online instructor and as a coach for online instructors. So I actually coach and evaluate and train instructors to teach in the online environment. So I'm very well aware of what this is all like from a student and from a faculty perspective. And not to mention, I was actually an online learner for one of my previous master's degrees, which I took in the early 2000s, when online learning was still in its infancy, and it was a video conference program. So everybody in my cohort had to literally drive to a central location, and we watched and participated on the screen that was in front of us at the site. So online learning has really evolved and It's really at a point now where, as many people know, it's just really easy to hop onto Zoom, to log into an LMS, although all LMSs, learning management systems, are different and have different features and characteristics. But the main function is to engage in a platform that allows you synchronicity. Synchronicity meaning real time, like what we are doing here on Zoom, a real time conversation, as opposed to writing emails or watching videos that have been uploaded at some previous point. So does that answer your question about how the different interests have come together?
Right. So you know, for people who are making this this transition now, and you know, thinking about, you know, particularly, you know, working with research methods courses or with supervision of researchers, you know, talk a little bit about the kind of synchronous and asynchronous, like why would you use one versus the other in a given situation?
Well, in most learning management systems, and even if one's not using a specific learning management system, there are tools which are either synchronous or asynchronous. Synchronous tools work in real time, like Zoom, like GoToMeeting, like a telephone, anything where you actually see and hear the person on the spot. Right. Asynchronous tools, on the other hand, are presentations that may have been created previously and are then uploaded, like PowerPoint presentations, videos, audio clips, etc. And because online learning is what I call a multimodal space, my recommendation is to use a mix of synchronous and asynchronous tools. Remember, they come with advantages and disadvantages. Firstly, not everybody has equal access to materials. Not everybody has the same bandwidth. Some people don't even have computers. So in those cases, synchronous tools are going to be to their disadvantage. They're not going to be able to access them. So we really have to be very, very wary of who our learners are, who our students are, and what access they have, so that we can really ensure equity for everybody. That is something that I really write about very prominently in my book, my new book, which is called The Art and Science of Teaching Online, Engaging and Empowering Your Online Learners. I really believe that well, not just that I believe, but it is known that equity in education is essential right from the start. Right. Accommodations have to be made for all students so that everybody has equal access, and that we have to be culturally responsive in our teaching as well. So using a mix of synchronous and asynchronous tools is really important, so that everybody has access at the level that they can handle or manage, be it their bandwidth or their abilities, their skills, their know-how, their familiarity, the time they have available. Remember, asynchronous, which is not in real time, has a lot of value too, because people can view those at their own convenience. Right. They can look at them over and over again if they don't get them the first time. So there's a lot of value in asynchronous and synchronous. Synchronous makes things a lot more personal because it's like in real time and we're all real people, not just a head talking on a screen. So that's why I say a careful and very, very thoughtful mix of synchronous and asynchronous tools is essential to engage learners. And the word engagement is something that has been thrown around and used a lot lately, but it really is a very central term, because engagement applies to both learners and instructors. Everybody needs to be engaged to actually work effectively in this environment, the online environment.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, my experience teaching kind of echoes what you're saying. And, you know, I think, you know, right now, especially for people who are making this shift, you know, all of the sudden without kind of, you know, the preparation and support just because of the circumstances we are in, you know, from what I can gather, you know, it seems like people are kind of maybe erring on the side of, you know, over-reliance on the synchronous, and that, you know, I think that, say, what I would call a lecture format, where, you know, the format is really heavily a presentation. From my point of view, it's like, why do you need people to log in at the same time to do that? You know, you could record that, or it could be a written materials. I mean, it's really kind of the flipped classroom idea. when, and I like your focus on engagement, because then, we're using those real-time meetings that are really that's the precious time that, people across time zones and everything are going to be logged in. What can you do in that time that is going to build trust between not only you and the students, but across the group of students, so that, when they are responding to one another, maybe critiquing each other's work, participating in different kinds of discussions, synchronous or asynchronous, that they don't feel like, oh, I better not post this, people will think I'm crazy, or they'll think I'm stupid or something, so, to use those times to really, have, interactive activities, or even, as a term progresses, where students are giving presentations and critiquing each other's, so that, you're using that live time for something that is lively, versus just, I'm going to, ask you to log in, and then I'm just going to talk at you for 45 minutes.
Well, I think you touched on two really important things. And again, I've written about these extensively in my new book. The one is creating community and collaborative learning, which I think is really important, that instructors create that for their students. So that students don't see online learning as alone learning.
Right.
That's something that I really feel very strongly about as well. And there's so many ways with the tools that are available today to instill that sense of community. We can use discussion boards. We can use peer review. We can use what I've written about in other articles called peer dialogue journaling, where students journal among each other. We can have students presenting, students teaching each other. It's not necessarily, and this is my second point, along with community, this should not be about the instructor as sage on the stage. The instructor, I believe, should be a co-learner, a co-presenter, and a collaborative partner in the process. And that goes for whether you're teaching online in any context, or whether you're working with research students or dissertation students or master's students or whatever. The way that the instructor conceptualizes her or his role in the process, I believe, is really important in terms of engaging students and empowering them. And when I talk about empowerment, that is the concept that I feel takes engagement to another level, because empowerment is really giving our students that sense of ownership, where they feel that they're in charge of their learning, and it's not just the instructor talking down to them, filling them with knowledge, which is the old-fashioned way of teaching, but rather that it's a broader discussion where learners can feel that they have come with their own life experience, which is very, very important and significant, and that they can use that life experience in writing their research. They can draw on their own life experience, because remember, research should be very meaningful and personal to whoever's doing it. And drawing on our own experience is the way to make it meaningful. I'm interested in different things than you may be interested in researching. And that's what creates the richness and the diversity of the research products. So, as I say, really focusing heavily on creating a sense of community among your learners, putting in place, we can even use social media, Facebook groups, Instagram. There are so many ways that we can create community and connect with our learners in ways that are meaningful to them. So we connect our learners, and then we connect with our learners individually on a one-to-one basis as a co-learner. As I'm here to support you, I'm here to help you succeed. What can I do to make this a more manageable process for you, especially when online learning has not been the traditional way that many learners have learned in the past, especially at a time like this.
Right. Yeah, I think, the co-learner role, also the facilitative role of making sure that, some people are not, the introverts and quiet people are being left out. I mean, just as you would in a good face-to-face meeting, all of those same skills. And one of the approaches that I used to use that I think, might be helpful to those who are watching is, just as a few moments ago, we were sharing my screen where you could see the PowerPoint slides. I use those kinds of features to be, so if I were, working with someone on a dissertation or a major project, where you can have that kind of coaching session where, we can put the document up and be, looking through it. So if I've reviewed someone's work and embedded the track changes, comments, and all of that stuff, then rather than just sending it to them and they're like, oh no, now what,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you can actually say, well, I'm sending you this. I want to meet with you in the next week to
Absolutely.
review, to go over these things. So then we can talk
Yeah.
through them, and that's much less intimidating,
Right.
especially to someone who is newly online.
Yeah.
So as you say,
Absolutely.
using the tools that we have and thinking about, the real capabilities of them,
Yeah.
for teaching and learning,
Yeah.
and being creative.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with what you've said completely. It's a multimodal environment, and we can take advantage of so many different modalities that we can really reach our students at a level that's comfortable with them and that works for them. Everybody has a preferred way of learning. We don't really talk about learning styles that much anymore, but a preference for ways they like to learn. And again, as you said, making ourselves real people, especially in this environment where it can become very impersonal and intimidating and isolating for people. Not just giving feedback on assignments as Word documents or in a written format, but making the time to literally meet synchronously with students. I always advise my faculty who I work with and who I coach to put that invitation in every single piece of feedback that they give their students on their work. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me.
Right.
I'm very happy to set up a time to talk, because as you say, that's when you can actually share the screen. There's also a function called screencast, where you can watch a video and share the screen at the same time and go through the areas that need the feedback or need attention by actually showing the student exactly where these areas are. And we have found in my work extremely high success rate and students feeling a lot more engaged when instructors take the time to offer these different ways of engaging.
Right. And it, for those watching who are thinking, oh, well, I've got a big class. I don't have time to meet with everyone one-on-one on each, review document. I mean, one of the things that I used to do would be, say, well, I've got 3 or 4 people who have the same problem, like they don't get what a literature review is, then have just a small group session with those. So if you don't have the time to do one-on-one, say once you've reviewed the submission of a major paper or a stage of a dissertation, kind of group them, like, these people are having issues with research design, and these people are having issues with writing, and do a small group session. Then that also helps to build community, and that the students don't feel like I alone am struggling with this. Others are having the same kinds of issues.
And then another thing I'd like to say is that I know that a lot of the online universities have this in place, but I'm imagining that a lot of other institutions that have had to go online in this recent past, there are also other resources other than you as the instructor. You can draw on your institution's library. There are resource centers, there are learning centers, there are curriculum centers. So it's not that you have to be meeting all the time with your students. You can also refer them to these other resources where they can also have synchronous meetings with other support people, not just you, the instructor. So I think it all serves to create a sort of a web of support and community.
Right. And also outside the university, I mean, I, on a, somewhat frequent basis, I'm a guest speaker in research methods classes. Hey, that's the great thing about being virtual. You're not limited to the people that you can just talk with face to face. So, so there are other, kinds of things. And I think, especially, to me, since we're with Methodspace focusing on research, that I think, especially in the research area where, it's just a really hard thing to learn. I mean, you've got there's the art and the craft, and, I mean, we're both qualitative people, but whether, whatever your methodology is, there's the, learning kind of the mechanics of how to do it. But then there's the, having the inquiring mind, having the open mind, having, there are just so many kind of personal characteristics that, for a student to be able to, put all of those things together. So, so I wanted to just ask kind of our last question, for the students who may be watching this, either people who maybe are new to doctoral study, or people who are new to studying online, what suggestions do you have kind of for people on the student side of things?
Okay. So firstly, I understand how stressful this must be for students, if we just talk about students now for a moment, because if you think about suddenly being whisked away from your classroom where you were going along for however many years and suddenly placed in this online environment, my first bit of advice is forgive yourself and be easy on yourself to begin with, because this is a very new learning experience. So don't think that you have to know everything immediately. It won't happen like that. So take it slowly and try and learn what you can as the days go on.
Mm-hmm.
That I'd say would be the first. Be open to learning. Be open to being a learner of a new environment, so to say. Stay focused. Stay focused on your work and on your research, because that's what you're trying to accomplish. You're trying to accomplish completion of a research study, or beginning your dissertation, or beginning a chapter, or whatever. So stay focused on whatever you were working on at the moment, and work methodically with your instructor, with your faculty member, and take advantage of everything that your instructor is offering you, the extra resources, the community, the discussion threads. Try and participate in whatever you feel comfortable with and what you feel will help you. Next, be open to asking questions. Ask questions. Don't feel that you're silly, or that anybody will look at you as though you don't know what's going on. Everybody has questions. That's a natural part of going into a new activity, a new way of learning, a new, complete new way of being, really. So do that. The other thing is, as I said earlier, online learning in any context should never be thought of as alone learning. So take advantage of the opportunities to collaborate with others, to work on projects together, to collaborate with your instructor, other students, other resources that are offered, including webinars that, as Janet said, are outside of your institution, and even conferences. Continue engaging in conferences. All the conferences this year that have been canceled have been offered online. So there is still that access to attend conferences and participate and present at conferences. And this will probably go on for a long time. So talk to your instructor if you're not sure about what conferences are applicable to your particular field of inquiry, and make a plan to engage in them, because that really is just an added learning experience.
Right.
Make use of your institution's resources. As I say, the library, the academic success centers, learning centers. Don't feel that you are in any way going to be considered weak or unknowledgeable. Those resources are there to support you. So do make use of them. And finally, reach out, as I say, for any assistance and support as needed, because you don't want to fall behind. That's the last thing you want to do. You want to keep your focus there. You want to keep your momentum going. You want to keep that excitement, which is what research is all about. It's the most wonderful thing to do research on a topic that's meaningful and important and special to you. So keep going forward one step at a time. And as I say, kudos to you for moving into this online environment, and really, I wish all the students so much success, because everybody can be successful.
Right. Yeah, I think you make some excellent points, and I hope that those will be helpful both to the students and to faculty who are trying to advise on their students about how to, get the most out of this experience, whether it ends up being the way you continue throughout your program, or whether this is a short-term, kind of part of what you do. So, well, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, I just want to say, how appreciative I am of all the SAGE resources that are offered to students at this time. The Methodspace sites, some of the other SAGE sites. I know that a lot of institutions are logging in and making use of SAGE materials, which have always been very high quality materials and really incredible resources for students and faculty. So thank you so much, Janet, and thank you for the opportunity to be the mentor in residence for this month of August, and to connect with you here. And I'm always available to take questions. So please, anyone feel free. If you have any questions, maybe not now, but later, let Janet know, and she can pass them on to me, and I'll be happy to address them.
Yeah, and there is a comment area at the bottom of the page. So if you've viewed this and you have some questions or some suggestions or resources that you'd like to share, use that space. So thank you. I'm just going to, we'll we'll see you on Methodspace.